Welcome into another episode of Potter Check Story Pod. I am Justin Quinn here with co-host Daniel Donabedian, and we have a special guest, Justin Turpin of WEEI. How's everyone doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, doing well.
Very cool. I just got from Chiapas. You guys saw my incredibly poor camera and bad mic, which was all I could bear to bring with me, my small little suitcase on my budget airline flight. Hopefully I'm a little clearer and less fuzzy looking on several counts. I did shave once between now and then. Can't really tell. But anyway, no one wants to hear about that. There's some news that we can talk about, and there's a lot of things to talk about. Martial arts, Celtics alumni coming and going, aprons, second and otherwise, but mostly the unfinished business of the Celtics. We will get into that in the second half of the pod, but let's talk about the news. At the top of the docket, we have Ben Simmons as a potential Celtics target. Daniel, I know you have some strong opinions on that, but Justin, I know at least your coworker, Megan Ottolini, has some pretty strong opinions on that as well. She's all the way out on such a possibility. What are your opinions on a potential signing?
You know what they say, great minds think alike, and that is definitely the case here. I am all the way out on Ben Simmons. It just doesn't make sense stylistically for this team. And what you're looking at from a roster building standpoint, this team needs a true center. Right now, your big man rotations, Luka Garza, Neemias Queta, and Xavier Tillman. And Xavier Tillman's more of a four. You don't have a true center really to back these guys up and who are very unproven in their minutes. They haven't had a ton of opportunity. You don't really know how this is going to go. So from a roster building standpoint and from a stylistic standpoint, it just makes no sense for the Celtics to pursue Ben Simmons. I mean, it'd be fun, right? It's like if you're going to go for a gap year, like at least make it interesting. But quick trivia question, by the way, for you guys real quick. How many three-pointers in his career has Ben Simmons made?
3, 2.
I'm going to go 2.
5.
5.
You think Joe Mazzulla sees that number and is all ecstatic? I know it's not all about threes, and it's really about creating the advantages, and he can do that as a ball handler. But stylistically, it just doesn't make sense for this team.
Daniel, you had some thoughts on this also.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Megan and Justin on this one too. When I saw that his name pop up, I was like, oh no. I mean, like Justin was saying, he doesn't fit with Joe's play style or Joe's coaching style. He likes those guys who are like kind of dogs or hard workers like Pritchard. And if we know anything about Simmons, that's not really him. Is he a team guy? I don't think we've seen that. Is he a shooter? Absolutely not. Does he have a good history of health? Absolutely not. I mean, there's nothing about him that really makes me like think the Celtics need this guy. There are just so many red flags. And ultimately, he's never really seemed to care about winning that much, even from back in the day with Philly. So I would really hope they steer clear from him.
Yeah, you kind of also touched on the last little red flag, which is just a culture red flag. He's never really been part of a winning culture anywhere that he's been. The Clippers, I think, last season were as close as he's come to that. And, he did just enough last season where I actually took this more seriously than I probably should have. Just as if he could replicate that, I would not hate the signing. But the more I thought about it, the more potential bad influence for a bunch of young players. And even if he's a great influence, the more playing time he will be taking away from developing rookies who play similar positions to him. So yeah, I think I'm all the way out on that as well. One guy I am not all the way out on, or even a little bit out, I'm actually a lot more into than a lot of Celtics fans at least, is Georges Niang. Or Niang. I'm not quite sure how to say that. I'll get that right. Don't worry. Apologies if I screwed that up. How are y'all feeling about Niang as a potential addition in light of his recent comments on the OGs? Justin.
Yeah, I'll give him a lot of credit for those comments. Like, that's one way to really win the fan base over is just be a good sport about it. Of course, he sees the discourse online. I know players will say that they're not online and they're not aware of what's going on. They are very much aware of what's being said, especially when they're coming into a new city. So for him to play it off as a good sport, I give him a lot of credit. And that's another thing, too. This whole thing, if Jaylen Brown can go to a Connecticut Sun game with him and they can get over their beef, then I don't know why fans can't move on as well. The whole thing seemed a little bit too fabricated to me to begin with, where people were kind of just looking for a reason to dislike this guy. I get it. You traded, like you said, you traded the unicorn for a minivan. Hilarious line, by the way. Great job by him. But like, I get it. But I'm with you, Dr. Quinn. I'm with you. I like this is a guy that I'm kind of in on as well. I think it's somebody that fits Joe Mazzulla's style a little bit better than some of the other free agent options out there. I know he was a trade, but some of the guys that are out there now that if you wanted to bring anyone in, like this is a good fit. He can shoot the ball from outside. He's scrappy too. He's like obviously like the reason
Yeah.
Celtics fans don't like him is because he grabbed Jalen Brown's ankle in a playoff game. You know who loves that? Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla loves that. And those are the guys that they need. Like this team's gonna have to have, for lack of better terms, they're going to have that dog in them. Like that's how they're going to have to make up this ground. They're not going to be the most talented team in the NBA this year. That's just the reality. I know they're very top heavy as well, but if you can have other guys who also know how to be professional, like this guy's been around the block, he's played for different franchises, played with great players. He's made a career, right? He's been almost a decade in the league now. It's like he has experience that is so valuable to younger players. Where yeah, I'm in on him, and obviously he's still a trade candidate, a very hot one at that. But if he does stick around, like that's not a bad thing for the Celtics.
Daniel?
Yeah, I might be a little biased because he grew up in Methuen, and that's literally 2 towns away from me in New Hampshire. Like it's right over the line. But he's kind of like the anti Simmons, honestly. What we were just talking about. Justin mentioned how he's been on all these winning teams. I'm pretty sure he has the most regular season wins since 2020 of any
Yeah.
player, and
Wow.
Tatum's like close behind. So, whereas Simmons has been a part of those kind of negative cultures, he's been a part of those winning cultures. And of course, he's not as talented. We know that, but he can shoot. Like you were saying, he's scrappy, and he seems self-aware given what he said on the podcast, which Boston fans will appreciate because I think they can see through the BS and they appreciate that he knows that he's not winning any popularity contests right now. But he looks willing to contribute.
Yeah, he really sold me. I was already kind of in beforehand for the reasons that y'all have laid out, but in particular, there's some other reasons that I want to talk about. Hanging on to him and another potential expiring contract through the end of the season. I'll tell you why later. One person the Celtics will definitely be hanging on to through at least the next season would be their new hire, Drew Nicholas, as Executive Director of Player Personnel for Hoops Hype's Michael Scotto. He was previously with Denver, Brooklyn. He scouted from Minnesota, Philadelphia, and Boston earlier in his career as a scout. As a player, he was a 9-year overseas player, did not make the NBA, but was a 2-time EuroLeague champ, an NCAA champ with his alma mater of Maryland. So he knows ball, right? I'm wondering how y'all feel about him stepping into the role of that, it was a pretty big role of Austin Ainge, who admittedly did some pretty good scouting for Boston over the years.
Yeah, and Remy Cofield too. Like they lost two guys that played really prominent roles in that front office, and they've done a great job. Look at just drafting and developing over the last couple of years. Like you can always point to Maine, like Luke Cornett just got paid. He was a development story here. Sam Hauser as well. Peyton Pritchard. Like they've done a great job really drafting and developing guys specifically since like what the last 5-6 years, and those two guys were really big roles in that. So to bring in a guy who's been around the block, has been on winning teams that just contributed to developing in those teams, like that's a big deal, and that's a big role that they needed to fill, especially with the second apron. Like you can't overstate the importance of drafting and developing talent at this stage, especially when you have two supermax players for the foreseeable future in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and then you want to have Derek White in that mix as well. So you're already really kind of teetering in a dangerous area because of the contracts that you have for the long term that you want to keep these guys together. So it's so important to draft and develop guys, and to have somebody that's done it for different teams and has been around the game for a while, that's super important. And just to have another voice in there, because again, like with Cofield and Ainge, like those are two guys that really played big roles in this front office that departed. So to have another voice in there that's been there is really important, because you can't overstate how important it is to develop these guys, especially given the situation the Celtics are in.
Do you think his lack of experience as an NBA player could actually be an advantage in some kind of a way?
Yeah, I was intrigued when you said that because, I mean, as we've seen the Celtics' first pick this year with Gonzalez, a lot of the talent is overseas. Like, we're seeing it more and more. So having a guy who knows the ins and outs of like the Euro leagues and all the various leagues for different countries is helpful. I mean, the best players for the most part are still coming out of college, but it's going to be helpful to have somebody who knows how to navigate that and who also has a connection with the Celtics prior to.
Absolutely. Another connection to the Celtics. Hayden Gray will be headed to the Maine Celtics. He led the NCAA in steals per game last season. Had a decent outing in Las Vegas Summer League. Any thoughts on him, Justin?
Yeah, I like it. He's only 22 years old. These are guys that are going to go to Maine. Take a shot on them. Take a flyer. Kids that could develop into players. And I watched a little bit of him last year because I was really high on UC San Diego. I picked them to actually beat Michigan in the first round of the tournament, and he shot terribly. Pretty sure he was like 3 of 11. I was like, he busted my bracket, so I'm kind of sour on Hayden Gray a little bit. No, but he's a good player. He's a smart player. He's got great instincts. Obviously, has magnet for hands with all these steals that he racks up. He's 3-and-D, and those are the type of guys that the Celtics want. We were just talking about it, how Ben Simmons doesn't really fit what they're doing because he's kind of the anti of a 3-and-D, and just the D, right? He's a good defender, but he can't shoot threes. Like that's kind of where Hayden Gray is, where he can do both of those, and it'd be a good stylistic fit. And again, he's 22 years old. You'd rather have those spots in Maine be occupied by younger players who really might have been overlooked a little bit. And Brad Stevens has kind of hinted at that before, guys like taking a chance on guys that might have been looked over. And again, there's only 60 picks in the draft. Like there's plenty of good talent that doesn't get drafted, that goes undrafted. So you take a shot on these guys, and it goes back to what we were just talking about, the need to develop young talent, just given the situation the Celtics are in. This is a guy that you certainly see the upside with, and you take a shot on him. Why not? I like it.
Very cool. Anybody else that was on the Vegas Summer League roster, Daniel, that you might have preferred that they give a shot to in such a way that, isn't obviously headed someplace else?
Well, I guess we don't really know about Bassey. I've heard some of the news doesn't seem too favorable for the Celtics, but he really impressed me. And like we were saying at the top of the show, they need a center. They need another big guy. I mean, yeah, it's nice having all these guards, but like when Kata could be your starter, that might be an issue. So I would have liked to see something with Bassey. I don't know if that's going to happen from what I've seen online and what I've heard from various sources, but yeah, he impressed in every single game he was in, and I know he came in unexpectedly. He wasn't even on the initial roster, but he's got some experience with the Spurs. I wouldn't mind them taking a chance on him, especially given their current roster after just a few hours ago.
Yeah, so we should probably touch on the elephant in the room that kind of blew up our rundown just a little bit before we started recording, which is JD Davison is no longer a Boston Celtic. He has been waived with his non-guaranteed salary, getting Boston about $1.9 million under the second apron. We could talk about that, but we have this little thing that we do before we take a closer look at something where our guest steals the pod. And that's you, Justin. So what are we going to talk about before we get into all the unfinished business Boston still has to deal with?
Yeah, I want to talk about Sam Hauser. That's who I want to talk about. I keep seeing everyone's kind of selling him off. Everyone's kind of putting him in trade talks. It makes sense, right? Because you're paying a lot more for him than his $10 million salary when you factor in the luxury taxes and whatnot. But after listening to Brad Stevens before Summer League, it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere. He kept referencing the core, and he kept saying Jalen, Derek, Peyton, and Sam. He kept lumping him in there. And I think it makes a lot of sense for the Celtics. You're not going to find a guy who shoots 40% from three consistently through all levels of play. He's never shot below 40% in high school, college, G League, or the NBA. That's impressive, and that's impossible to find. And how many times we've already mentioned the three-point shooting the Celtics love on this podcast alone. Everyone knows it, and a guy that fits that mold and can shoot it so well. And another thing about Joe Mazzulla that I think people overlook is how much they value spacing on the floor with Joe. That's something that I don't know why it took the Celtics so long to kind of realize this. And Joe Mazzulla did a great job of really nailing it in and helping them understand the importance of it. There's not much better spacers on the floor than Sam Hauser in the NBA when you have a guy that's shooting that well. On top of that, though, you're looking at, when they keep saying the retool, right? It's a mini rebuild is essentially what a retool is. And you're looking at next season. This year's a wash. It's go out and see what you have. That's what it is. You can't enter this year with the front court that you have, like we've been talking about, and say you're seriously considering like playing, like you're actually contending. Like that's just not reality. That's not the reality with this team. And when you're looking at the future, it just makes so much more sense for Sam Hauser to be part of this team. It's one of the most effective lineups was Tatum and Hauser on the floor together. And that's in large part due to the spacing that Hauser creates in his gravity. So I keep seeing a lot of people throw that name out there. And two things, I don't think it'd be a good idea. And the other one, I don't think it's going to happen.
What do you think, Daniel? Is Hauser a part of the Celtics' future, or is he trade bait?
Yeah, gotta say I'm a little guilty at the start of the offseason being
Me
like, oh,
too.
maybe
Hands
they could
up.
trade him. Yeah, because like Justin was saying with his contract, and I mean, everybody needs shooting. But I do agree he's valuable, and at this point, it doesn't seem like they're moving him at all. So I don't know if it'd be a good idea to kind of surprise everybody with that now. But yeah, his 3 point shooting, obviously. But last season, we also saw him work inside the arc a little bit too.
Yeah.
Some of
Off the
those
dribble.
jumpers, like, yeah, it felt automatic every time he was inside the arc, which we hadn't really seen before. And also, he's just another good story of a G League guy working himself up, which could probably be a good example for some of their other younger players right now. And he's just another dude who's accepted the culture the Celtics have. He's bought into that. And I know Joe Mazzulla appreciates that. And like we said, of course, his shooting. So yeah, I think I'd be more on board with him staying than I was before.
I'd probably get some hate for this too, but I think he's a better defender than people give him credit. And I think he's a sneakily
Absolutely.
underrated rebounder. Like, I think his rebounding is actually one of the better parts of his game. And he just doesn't get a lot of credit for it because everyone's looking at the shooting. And when he's not shooting well, it's like, oh, this guy can't really do anything else. I don't think that can be further from the truth. I think he's actually developed as a defender as he goes on. And that's another credit to Joe Mazzulla. I mean, what they've done, and obviously it helps when you're surrounded by guys like Derek White and Jaylen Brown, all defensive team caliber guys, Drew Holiday as well. You have these guys that obviously helps, but the scheme works. They finished second, and fourth in defensive rating in the 3 years under Joe Mazzulla. It works, and Sam Hauser is a product of that system in a way because obviously he wasn't a great defender when he first got to the NBA, but he's getting better and better, and I don't think people give him enough credit for that. So when you're looking at a guy that has all these skills, that has what 10 million, 10 million, 11 million, and 12 million on the contract over the next 4 years. That's extremely manageable. And getting off of it for luxury tax purposes or whatever it may be wouldn't make any sense. It just wouldn't be worth the trade.
Well, you will be excited to hear that I think there is a much easier path to doing so. So let's just dive right in with a closer look at what the Celtics still have to do. And one of the things we've been hearing that the Celtics are still trying to do is to trade Anfernee Simons, which I am actually against. I'll tell you why a little bit later. But what do you guys think? Justin, do you think he's going to be dealt?
I think he will be at the deadline. I do, just because he's on an expiring deal. But trading him at the deadline, first of all, they've been shopping him. It's been reported widely across the league that they've been shopping him. And it's been what now? A month, roughly a month. And there hasn't been a significant movement here. It really seems like they're kind of stuck in mud. That tells me around the league, the value's not that high. And if you look at Portland, assuming that taking on that Drew Holiday contract and really doing it for a 1-for-1, in fact, they attached picks at first to get rid of Simons in exchange for Drew Holiday. And Drew Holiday, as we know, is a great player, but Anfernee Simons is much younger and he's extension eligible. You would have had control over him for years to come and somebody they wanted to move on from. So just reading between the tea leaves here, it seems like the league-wide interest in Anfernee Simons isn't all that high. So you're going to bring him in, right? Let him play until the deadline. If you're overachieving and Jason Tatum's progressing and, hey, like we could make a run at this, the Eastern Conference is wide open, hang on to him. If not, he's going to have plenty of opportunities in this offense, right? He's going to fit the offense great. First of all, they're going to play much faster with Jaylen Brown running it. Second of all, he's a great three-point shooter. Again, there's those magical two words again, three-pointer. There you go. He's an excellent three-point shooter. And again, we were just talking about Sam Hauser and how he's been much better defensively under the Joe Mazzulla scheme. And now this, again, I might have to alter this a little bit because when you have the front court that you have with Garza, Queta, and Tillman, it's tough to really believe in this defense too much. But as an individual defender, maybe Joe Mazzulla can really get him in and really hone in because that's something they really prioritize, Mazzulla and the Celtics. So I think it makes a ton of sense to hang on to him, build up that trade value, and then move on. I think they've been really clear, Mike Zarin and Brad Stevens, that this is all about building assets for the future, and teams are always going to be looking for a shooter at the deadline. And that's exactly what Anfernee Simons is. He's one of the best offensive scorers. Really, in the Western Conference last year, you could actually look at it. He's one of the better scorers, and Brad Stevens has been pretty clear about that. Like, maybe on this East Coast here, we don't catch a lot of the Portland Trailblazers games because they play at 10 o'clock or whatever. But he's a great scorer, and there's going to be interest for him at the deadline, and maybe that's where teams will overpay. It's like, well, maybe we are an Anfernee Simons away. We get a guy like this coming off the bench and give us some scoring. Like, yeah, then maybe there will be. So I think you hold on to him and move him at the deadline because it's all about building for future assets.
There's been some rumbles from Jake Fisher, for example, that maybe Memphis is interested in making a trade with Boston, presumably given the fit. That might be an option. Daniel, what do you think the Celtics are going to end up doing with Simons this season?
Yeah, I could see them dealing him at the deadline, like Justin said, or maybe hanging on to him for the year and then letting him walk if it doesn't work out. But I'm kind of on board with Justin. I like what he could bring to the Celtics scoring. They're going to need that without their leading scorer. Yeah, the defense will take a hit, but maybe Missoula can work on that. It will probably be an issue on the whole team, not just Simons. But I'm for keeping him for now. I don't mind them shopping him though at the moment because this is his expiring deal. I could see why that's worth shopping. And I was going through teams like who could maybe need him. Memphis just got Ty Jerome, so that rumor kind of confused me. I don't know why they'd be that interested in him. Maybe Indiana because there's no Halliburton, no Turner. Maybe they could use another scorer, another guard. I don't know. The market seems to be a little confused on him, but overall, I wouldn't mind them keeping him for the year.
Can I throw some numbers at you guys real quick? Something that just
Please.
jumped out to me. You like numbers? I love numbers. Stats are the best. They're not for losers. Don't listen to anybody. All right, so this is about Jason Tatum and just how much they're going to miss him. Obviously, we know how much he's going to be missed, right? He's one of the best players in the league. But just listen to how much he was doing for this team. 26.8 points. That was 23% of the team total. He took 20.3 shots. That was 22% of the team total. He had 6.0 assists. That was 22.9% of the team total. You're missing like a quarter of your production in your shots, your points, your rebounds, and your assists. Who's the guy that can help at least with the assist and the shots and the points? Anfernee Simons. That's a guy that can help out in that department. Like, you need to make up ground somewhere. Again, like, the expectation, I think, in the building would be to at least try to make the playoffs, right? When Jason Tatum gets back, it's a huge get. And, like, they're not going to try to build through the draft, like, as much as they probably want to. It's like they're going to be too good to be a lottery team, but maybe too bad to go all the way. Like, they're in such a tough situation here. But Anfernee Simons is a guy that can help make up for those lost ground there that we were just talking about with Tatum.
So I like numbers, and this brings me to a lot of different numbers that I wanted to throw at you guys. I'm going to need to check with our buddy Yossi Goslin, a cap guru, if there ever was one, on whether my math is bad about this. But one thing I do know is that these kinds of guards are not getting big contracts, right? We are seeing them sign for like parts of the mid-level exception or less, sometimes even as low as minimum deals, depending on just what kind of a player they are. And in the case of Simons and Niang, they're both expiring contracts, right? You could end up with about, currently after the JD Davison waive, they are 1.9 roughly under the second apron, about 10 million under the first, about 18 million above the tax. So if they let them both walk and just filled in the rest of the open roster spots with the minimums, that would put them in a situation where they would have about $24 million to spend on those minimums, plus Niang and Simons if they wanted to bring them back, or they could use the $22 million traded player exception from Kristaps Porzingis to bring in talent. Any portion of it, several players that could fit into it. That doesn't have to be those two guys that they already have on the contract, though. They would have the bird rights for both of them if they wanted to keep either or both of them. there is a path where if they could sign them cheaply enough, where not only could they stay underneath the first apron, they'd have $16 million to work with for those two other roster spots plus these two, whether they're signing these guys or not, to stay underneath the entire tax line, which would put them in a position where they could very, very nimbly, maybe not very aggressively in terms of like the quality of players on the roster immediately, be under the repeater tax 2 years in a row, get out of it, kind of give themselves a little bit more room in a way that theoretically, according to my bad math, and I'm bad at math, so don't take this as gospel, but they're smarter than I am, and I see this, so there must be a way that they could actually pull something like that off. Do you guys think something like that would be worth it, Justin?
I mean, it's tough because to get out of the repeater penalties, you have to be out for 3 of 4 years or something like that. So it wouldn't make any sense, right? Because as soon as
2 years
Jason
in a row.
Tatum's back, you're going to go 3 years in a
2 years
row,
in a
right?
row.
So 2 years in a row. So as soon as Jason
Yeah.
Tatum's back, you'd imagine they're going to go right back to spending. Like you have to maximize this window where you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum together for as long as you do. So they're going to go right back to spending. I think that's the expectation. As soon as he's back, that's what they're going to do. So I don't really see a point of it. Maybe you try to lessen that a little bit by selling off pieces at the deadline, which we were just talking about, and in exchange for future assets or whatever. But no, I don't think it really makes a ton of sense.
Daniel, what about you? Where do you fall on this?
Yeah, I would mostly agree with Justin, and I would say for the new ownership's sake, they better start spending when it kind of resets, when they're kind of past the soft rebuild that they're in right now, because otherwise it's going to be like a lot of backlash. Because I'm already seeing like a ton of comments just online sort of going at them for being cheap this year. Although I think some of those comments are a little misguided because they have to be to even compete and even bring guys in because they're just so over the second apron previously. But yeah, the repeater matters, and I think it matters to the ownership, whether fans like it or not. But yeah, I would just hope that they really break the bank once they're more able to, which I don't think they are right now. We all know their second apron issues, which they're finally under. I know we'll get to that more. But yeah, just for their sake, I hope Bill Chisholm and company are ready to spend more when Tatum and Brown are on the court together.
Word. I actually am of the mind that it all depends on how Jason Tatum looks. If Jason Tatum comes back this season and looks pretty good, they're probably going to spend the next season. If he doesn't come back this season, they might play it by ear and maybe load up using that traded player exception for KP or some other means of adding talent to the roster gradually, depending on what they see from him on the court. Because I agree, like you don't want to waste an entire year of a player of Jason Tatum, never mind Jaylen Brown's and everybody else on the roster's prime years, which is what they're in right now, right? And they don't have too many of those left. And really, windows, we never know how big they are and what kind of opportunities are in front of you anyway. So, at least for me, I think I kind of agree with you, but I think that because of how expensive it's going to be and the potential value of keeping that window open, particularly if Jason Tatum does have a kind of a slow return. Like we all saw, it was a different injury, but Gordon Hayward took a little bit of time to return to more of the player that he was. He never quite did, but even still, it took him like more than a season to really get back to being who he was. And if that's how he's going to be, Tatum's going to be the season after this one, they might stay below the luxury tax for another season. So that leaves us with two guys. I keep thinking JD Davison's on the team. He's no longer on the team. Two guys with unguaranteed contracts, Niang and Jordan Walsh. Justin, do you think that they are safe now for the rest of the season, or do they still have something to prove?
I think Kate is definitely safe because you don't really have many other options. For Jordan Walsh, his will come fully guaranteed on opening night, so they'll have a decision to make between now and presumably training camp. But I just don't see them moving on from Jordan Walsh just yet. Obviously, still a really young prospect, 21. He was one of the youngest players on the summer league roster, and it was his third year playing. So yeah, they're going to probably hang on to him for a little bit now and just see where it goes from there. Especially because again, we were talking about it earlier. Just developing is so important, and I think it seems like he has the intangibles. Right, he's athletic, he's long, he plays defense. It's the shooting that's the issue, and we've seen kind of flashes of it, but we just haven't seen it consistently. So I think both of them will be safe moving forward. And Nemish Queta for sure. I mean, Daniel, you mentioned earlier, like that guy could be your starting center this year. So I don't think he's going anywhere. But Jordan Wall should be one to monitor. But I just think, just given the number and how low it is specifically as well, I don't see them moving on from him.
Any dissenting thoughts, Daniel?
No, not really. I mean, with Tatum's injury, Walsh becomes a lot more important. So I don't see them moving on from him, at least next year. Now, after that, I don't know. Him and Kada, I think this upcoming season is the biggest year of their careers by
Yeah.
far. Like, Kada wants more minutes, like most guys do. He's going to get it. Walsh has wanted more minutes too. He's going to get it. And it's going to be their time to prove it. It was like that story from, or that quote from the anonymous source that Keith Smith had, where he's like, this is a make or break it year for Jordan Walsh. So make or break, he's got to prove it. But like Justin said, he's very young still. But I think the future of their Celtics careers is going to be pretty much defined by next season.
Yeah, we saw the version of Jordan Walsh we really needed to see in summer league too. So I'm hopeful that is something that can be scaled back a little bit, but still scaled up from what he's been doing in terms of summer league versus what he usually plays in the NBA. Pretty hopeful that he will be around after next season. But one person who almost certainly will not be around next season yet is still not resolved is Al Horford. We got a tidbit of news today from Shams, basically saying that everything that's been happening, as we probably mostly all suspected, is due to Jonathan Kuminga not having decided on what he is going to do. He does not like the Warriors' offers, which in turn is holding up their other moves, including Al Horford, theoretically. That may not be the case. He may have other things in mind. He's been connected to other teams, as well as to retiring. So, Justin, what do you think is going to happen with Al Horford?
I think Al Horford to the Golden State Warriors is the worst kept secret in the NBA right now. It's
Yeah.
it's essentially done, right? They're just waiting on Kuminga, and I think that Shams report earlier today confirmed it. And it makes a lot of sense for him, to be completely honest. And just knowing the type of relationship that he has with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I don't think they were really holding them back at all. Maybe Jaylen was a little bit. 'Cause it's like, all right, yeah, I finally get to run the team, and you're gonna get out of here. But like with Jason, he's probably like, hey, go out and try to compete, go out and go cash in again. Like I think they have the utmost respect for Al Horford that he could have done anything, and they were not going to be angry about it at all. Even if he went to the Lakers, they were not going to care. They have so much respect for the guy, and they're going to support him every step of the way. But yeah, I think it's the worst kept secret in basketball right now that he's going to be a Golden State Warrior. And Steph Curry was speaking to the media a couple weeks ago and kind of slipped up on it. He's like, when, if it happens, yeah, like it's done. He's going to be Al Horford's going to be a Warrior, and that's a team I wouldn't want to see in the first round if I'm a Western Conference playoff team. Just think about all the experience they have from top to bottom on that roster. I mean, specifically at the top, right? Like it's Curry, Draymond, Al now, Jimmy Butler, Steve Kerr, obviously. So there's a lot of experience on that team that I wouldn't want to see them in the playoffs. I just don't know how they're going to play in the regular season. Like those guys are going to be managed throughout the year. So they could be like a 6 seed right out front of the play-in, might even be host a play-in game at the 7. But that's a team I wouldn't want to see in the postseason for sure.
Absolutely. I'm not sure why they are being held to a different standard than the Los Angeles Clippers, but this is not a Clippers podcast. I have my doubts about that team. That said, do you think that this delay could potentially impact Al's decision, Daniel?
I don't think so. I mean, Kuminga definitely doesn't seem to care about like the Warriors' offseason plans at the moment. Like I think he's pretty comfortable with waiting out and kind of wrecking their plans at the
Kuminga,
moment.
no, not him. He's not notoriously selfish or whatever. Not him.
Yeah. But I think once that gets settled, once the dust settles, like Justin said, I think he'll be a Warrior. Even though that'll sting for Celtics fans, especially after seeing Marcus Smart go to the Lakers too. Um, they should appreciate him still, everything he's done for the Celtics. But yeah, I think it's just something we're gonna have to wait from what Sham said, it does not seem imminent or even that'll happen in like the next week or so. But it's kind of just like the anvil over the head moment. We know it's going to happen. It's just when's it going to drop?
So one thing that is probably not going to drop immediately, but it could, but this would not be very interesting podcasting if it didn't, is what the Celtics are going to do with that open roster spot that JD Davison has vacated. Uh, they might just keep it open as long as possible, even for the entire season. They don't necessarily need to load up for the postseason. They could be cheap. I think if they're smart, they're going to move some guys through it on some non-guaranteed deals and see what they have. But there's also some interesting unsigned free agents. Some of the best available right now for guards are Russell Westbrook, Malcolm Brogdon, Gary Payton II. For wings, Amir Coffey, Delano Banton, old friend of the Celtics, Trey Lyles. And then bigs, who I think all agree the Celtics could really use. Ben Simmons, who we already spoke on. Charles Bassey, who I think I've heard rumbles about maybe going to Italy. Maybe this might be a better option, maybe not. Precious Achua, Chris Boucher, Thomas Bryant, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Any of those guys sound at all interesting to you, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying this too. The Celtics, as long as Brad Stevens has been the president of basketball operations, have typically operated under the impression of having that final roster spot open. Now, I would wonder that if Jason Tatum's injury impacts that, because you're essentially carrying 15 now, which like it's 14 still. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to have the flexibility with the open spot, but you also have Jason Tatum, who's out the entire year, holding up one of those roster spots. So I'd be interesting to see what happens there and if that actually impacts it, or if they want to keep it flexible to maybe Amari Williams is playing well in Maine, and that's a guy that they want to give him a shot, right? Especially if they're not really progressing the way they wanted to, and they really lean into the youth movement and just give these guys a chance. Like Amari Williams could be one, but I'm looking at younger guys. Like a Charles Bassey, I think would be good specifically for this year. And then maybe you do look at him and see like, what can he do? And maybe I'm just saying that because it was a name that was already in the house and was arguably their best player in Summer League this year. Like, I think that's what's really drawing me to him. And granted, the Summer League competition is a lot less than the NBA competition, but we've seen him be effective in NBA minutes. And to have that guy already kind of in your building and already kind of planting that seed, I think it's worth mentioning. It's worth monitoring because that's a guy that they could definitely use. And even beyond this year, if they want to bring him back, it's not going to like they're not going to be taxing him. They're not going to be asking as much because when Jason Tatum gets back, you just imagine that they go out and get a big by then, an established big, and maybe you find out that Luka Garza can play. I mean, his per 36 minutes have been great. I don't know how much you guys look into the per 36 stats. I know JQ, you're a big stats guy like myself. I mean, we might look into them a little bit, but he's a per 36 darling. Like that's something that that shows something. That shows a guy that hasn't really had a ton of opportunities. So see what he's got. But I don't know. I would kind of hope they leave it open though, to be honest, because if a guy like Amari Williams, like I'm intrigued by him. I'm really intrigued by him. He was a fifth-year senior as well, a little bit on the older side for a prospect. So, he's been around, seems really mature from the conversations that we've had with him very briefly. I think only two, and then he talked a little bit at Summer League. But when you're listening to him, he's really mature, and he's a big guy, obviously a great passer. I think he fits what they're trying to do. So I would leave it open and just see if any of those guys progress, because I think that's what they should do. I mean, especially if they're kind of spinning their wheels a little bit, not going anywhere, just lean into the youth movement, and Amari Williams would fit that.
I would kind of be a hybrid, as I was hinting earlier, just run guys from wherever you can find them that have an unsigned option going on at the moment, just to see if you can find a little something there. No guarantees, no long-term deals, just see what happens for 15, 20 games apiece and just see what pops. And if nothing pops, then, just leave it open at the end of the season because you're probably not going to the playoffs. And if you do go to the playoffs, you probably aren't going very far in the playoffs anyway. But Daniel, if you were the GM of the Boston Celtics, what would you do with that roster spot?
I would like to look at Bassey, but since we've already talked about him, I'd also mention Thomas Bryant.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of flies under the radar, but in the finals, he was pretty good for Indiana. And he was also pretty good against the Knicks, too, in the Eastern Conference Finals. So there's kind of an unsung guy that they could take a chance on, maybe just for the year, while Tatum recuperates and they kind of go through their soft rebuild or retooling, whatever you want to call it. But that's a name I'm kind of interested in. But I think the past two seasons, Brad Stevens has left it open, so he'll probably do that again. And otherwise, some of the names you mentioned, I feel like they're kind of just names like Westbrook, Brogdon. Like, oh, okay, it's intriguing, but I don't know how realistic that is. And also, does that really move the needle for them? I don't think so.
Not
But
bigs
for
either.
big men, yeah, for big men, that's pretty interesting, and it's just a position of need. We're going to be talking about it all season, I think. And Brad even said it in one of his pressers. He's like, people are going to look at that and know like that's not our strength. They're going to know it's a point of weakness, but it's up to the guys they have, like Garza, Queta, to prove otherwise. And I don't mind that strategy, but I feel like you got to be realistic that they're not totally going all in if that's the strategy they're employing.
Yeah, I feel like Brian could be an interesting signing too, just because of the fact that he shoots the three ball. He has
Mm-hmm.
dallied with joining the Celtics in the past, and he fits the age group at about, I think he's 27, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
27.
So I would not be upset about that. Though I do think that he could probably find a better home for what he wants to do, because he's not going to really be competing for anything. Though he would get plenty of playing time, conceivably. Uh, the only other thing I can think of off the top of my head is sussing out the rotations. I have, for starters, Pritchard, White, Brown, Hauser, Queta, a bench of Simon, Shireman, Minot, Niang, Garza, and then Shulga, Walsh, Gonzalez, Tillman, Williams, bringing up the deep bench. You guys have any opinions that someone might actually not be in order like that? Justin.
I'd like to see Hugo Gonzalez higher, but that's just a personal preference. I think you got it right. I think Peyton Pritchard should start, especially if we're talking about potentially moving Anfernee Simons at the trade deadline. It would make a lot of sense to take a guy out of your starting lineup at that point. So I think Peyton Pritchard should be your starter, and I think he's going to be in line. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays the most minutes on the team this year. I mean, actually, you know what? I guarantee he's going to do it. You're not supposed to speak in absolutes in this business, but yes, he's absolutely going to lead the league and lead the team and maybe the league in minutes played this year. I think he was second or third last year. Obviously, coming off the bench, he's going to play a large amount of minutes. So, yeah, I would have him there. Maybe Sam Hauser slides in that starting role as well. Again, if they're going to hold on to him, maybe Niang, it's going to get moved to the deadline. They put Hauser there into that starting role. So, yeah, we'll see. But I think I kind of agree with what you have for the most part.
Daniel, any thoughts?
Yeah, I could maybe see them bumping up Simons and then putting down Pritchard just because those are the roles they're used to. Like Anthony Simons is used to starting, Pritchard's used to being off the bench. But yeah, like Justin said, I guess if you're toying with the idea of moving him, it would be maybe silly to make him a starter and then be like, oh, we're trading you at the deadline. But I mean, that aside, I'd agree for the most part. It's just troubling seeing Kada on the starting lineup, but like I don't disagree with it. It's just like that's the reality at the moment. And I will say he was decent last year, and he's been solid for them, especially in Maine too at times. But is he ready for a starting role? I guess we'll see. But he definitely has less experience than a lot of other starting centers out there.
He has
And
won
what
them
they
games.
do, yeah,
Yeah,
and what they do with the open roster spot could blow this entire starting dynamic apart anyway. I doubt it will, but you never know. I mean, if they bring in Thomas Bryant, he's starting.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'd be like curious about. Like if they are going to bring in somebody on, it's going to be a minimum deal, presumably. If they do fill it, it's going to have to be to try to stay as far under that apron as you can. And I think even if they brought someone in on the minimum, it might push them over just because of what they're dealing with here. So
Who, depending on who it was, yeah.
depending on who it was, like it might push you over. So they're really limited in what they can do. So I think Brad Stevens has been, to his credit, really transparent throughout this entire offseason, really since the day after they lost to the Knicks at that press conference. Daniel and I were there. I mean, he's been very transparent throughout this entire thing, as transparent as he can be, and I give him a lot of credit for that because in last time we talked before the summer league, it seemed like they were totally comfortable with going into the year with what they have now. Now, comfortable is a very loose term. It's more so accepting the fact that this is what they're going to do. I don't know how comfortable he was about it because he's mentioning the potential of Luka Garza and Nemias Queta being your starting center, and then in the same couple breaths later, he's mentioning the North Stars contending for a championship. Those don't really go hand in hand, in
No.
my opinion. And I don't think many people would argue to that. But he was transparent about the bigs too, and he's like, "Hey, we'll see. Like, we'll see what these guys have. And in other words, that was a really nice way of saying, like, yeah, this could be a train wreck, but we're going to go into the year like this because we have to.
And he did not say when the North Star for competing for
Right.
championships was going to be. Presumably not this season, but to put yourself in a better position for the future, which is how I am taking that to be personally.
100%.
Yeah.
Any
I mentioned
other?
it earlier. That retool, when they say retool, it's a mini rebuild. That's what it is. And
Yeah.
it's a retool and a reset. That's what it is. And the reality is too, when sailors are looking for this North Star, it is miles and miles and miles and miles away. So
Far.
maybe North Star is a fitting term when you're discussing this year. I mean, you haven't heard that in the years past, right? The last 2 years, you haven't heard
Never.
North Star. It's like, no, it's much closer than that North Star. That's way too far away to be using that as a director here. So I give him a lot of credit for being transparent. It just feels like from that last press conference, they are more than okay entering the year. I mean, again, they don't want to be okay with it, but they have to be, right? They've come to the realization that this is the card they were dealt. This is the second apron. And I think we as a Celtics, Celtics based here, I think we're in a really unique situation, right? Because you're seeing it firsthand. This is the first time we've ever seen a team dismantled by the second apron. Why? Because it was just adopted, right? And this is the first time that we're seeing it in the Celtics on this historic team. They were 100 games over 500 with that roster they just had. They won a championship, one of the most dominant 2-year runs in NBA history, and it comes to an end in a very sour way with your best player getting hurt and then the second apron being the first casualty of that in NBA history. It's a really unique circumstance. It's a really interesting place to be. And I mean, Wick Grossbeck said it a couple months ago, I think it was in March, that he'd want no one leading this charge than Brad Stevens. And I'd have to co-sign that, man. Like, just what he's done, he's got that cachet with him. So yeah, good thing he's leading this thing.
Yeah, I think that there is some advantage to being one of the first teams that has been brought down in this way, in that $30-ish million that Anfernee Simons has as an expiring could bring back a single, cheap, young, good player that it plays both ends of the floor, even if Simons never does find a way to do it with Boston. So I'm actually really interested in seeing how they conduct themselves with the rest of their unfinished business for the offseason and the regular season. Daniel, I miss anything? Justin, do we have any more unfinished business that we haven't touched on in the rundown?
I mean, at the moment, there's not a ton going on, but I would kind of echo what Justin's saying. Like, as troubling as the center situation is, and as uncertain as next season is, maybe the most uncertain season the Celtics have had in like the past 5 years or so. They still have the former executive of the year at the helm, and you got to trust him. They're all navigating something new with the CBA, like we were saying. They're kind of the first ones to fully dive in or at least feel the effects. But if you're gonna trust anybody, Brad Stevens is not a bad person to trust and have running the show. So I think Celtics fans are just gonna have to sit tight for a bit, and then, like we've been saying, 2026, 27, maybe that's the year they come back full force and start contending fully again. But yeah, pretty much just trust in Brad for now and be a little patient.
I would like to just offer some positive reaffirmation, whatever it may be, for Celtics fans as well. It feels like the pain is just about subsided, right? Like, you're not going to have to say goodbye to many other players that were here for the championship team. Like, I saw a picture on ring night the other day. It was just a picture of the ring night. And it's like, look at it. It's like, oh, these guys are gone. And that was less than a year ago. It's just crazy. So, like, Marcus Smart to the Lakers, like all this other stuff that's going on. It feels like right now, though, we're kind of settled in. And if anyone is to go, it's probably two guys that you really haven't built that fandom up with yet, like a Simons or a Niang. So I think the pain and suffering of what was the 2025 offseason, I think, is done. So that's rejoice, Celtics fans, and let's focus towards the future here.
All right. So to close, we have this thing, something to remember or forget. And for this one, just to give you, Justin, and you, Daniel, a little bit of time to think about one if you haven't already, I am going to remember a one Yam Madar. And the reason why I am remembering Yam Madar is because he was the next big Boston Celtics point guard. He was going to come over. He was going to have a great summer league. And, these things just don't happen sometimes. And not necessarily through the fault of him as a player. Other things with Malcolm Brogdon and so on ended up happening just to make it really kind of untenable for him to happen. And so that's kind of something to forget, but also to remember JD Davison, who won G League Most Valuable Player as a Boston Celtic two-way player, which is not nothing, right? That is really good for young players to get into your pipeline to look at and see as a potential that happened with the Celtics, and then maybe that can happen with me. So that's what I'm going to remember from JD Davis's tenure, even if he never really played at the NBA level with the Celtics. There's some value in moving players like that through your system, even if they never really suit up and contribute to the parent club. Justin, what do you got for us?
So this actually came to me mid-podcast here, but something to remember, an all-timer, the Thomas Bryant post-up asking for the ball when LeBron broke the record. That's something to remember. No matter what happens with this guy's NBA future, whether he's a Celtic or wherever he ends up, we will always have that picture because that is an all-time moment. He was calling for the ball. That is outstanding. I don't think that gets enough love. Like, he was calling for the ball on this historic, like, all-time sports historic milestone, not just the NBA, sports in general, of one of the greatest players, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time. And he is calling for the ball. Shout out Thomas Bryant, because that is phenomenal and hilarious. So that's something
to have the irrational confidence to make it in this league. Absolutely.
Seriously.
When Daniel. I mentioned his name, I thought of that moment too, Justin.
Of course, you knew, Daniel. You know where my mind was going. You knew where my mind was going.
Oh, yeah. With Justin, for people who don't know, LeBron is a frequent topic of conversation, as he is for the rest of the basketball world, like he is this summer again. But initially, I was thinking to forget I would talk about this offseason, but Justin kind of touched on that. I mean, Celtics fans know Marcus Smart to the Lakers, Al Horford going to leave. Like, it hurts for them, but we've talked about that. And yeah, I would say something to remember. I'll add JD Davison's dunks. Shout out for that. It was entertaining to watch, even though we didn't get to see it in full force. He just kind of suffered from some bad luck being behind a stud like Peyton Pritchard, who just his career rocketed and just shot up and took a lot of those minutes. And then lastly, I'll just highlight something to remember. Jaylen Brown's crazy offseason workouts.
Oh, yeah. Muay Thai?
Some of the
absolutely.
Stuff of the underwater, then, yeah, the stuff you're talking about, Justin, the karate, which I know Joe Mazzulla's loving. And Celtics fans should like too, because clearly he's in good enough shape after his knee operation to be mobile and
do you see the video?
I guess beating people up.
Him shooting around today? Oh, he looks great.
Yeah. In Spain, right?
Yeah. So for a guy that just had a procedure, 3-4 weeks ago, he's moving great. And, it was never really a question. Again, Brad Stevens being transparent, said he was going to be cleared well before training camp, which it certainly seems that way. He looked great in that video. And granted, it's a video. He probably approved it, depending on what account it came out of. So, you're always going to be careful with that stuff. We've been doing this all offseason with Stephon Diggs. I don't want to cross sports, but it's like, oh, he's posting him working out. Well, yeah, he posted it. Of course, it's going to make it look good. But Jaylen looks great, and they're going to need him to be.
Well, before we get you out of here, Justin, where can we find your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me all over the dial at 93.7 WEI and also on WEI.com for the written content. And yeah, kind of a sporadic schedule. It's summertime. They need me to fill in wherever at. So just keep it locked on the dial and you'll hear your boy.
Very cool. Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, you can check me out at Clutch Points. And as always, on Twitter at DanielD1214. And also now you can check me out on Celtics Wire too. So yeah, just Google my name honestly, and I'll pop up.
And of course, if you are listening to this or looking for Danny's work on the Celtics Wire, that's where you're going to find me. Until we talk again, adios.